successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly. You have successfully...
Good morning, everyone. This is Debbie Royce, Empire State Development's Corporate Secretary. I'd like to welcome everyone to this morning's meeting, and before we formally begin, I would ask that everyone please mute your lines unless you're speaking. As we have our directors joining by video this morning, we'll do a quick roll call before we get started. Hope Knight, Acting Commissioner of the Department of Economic Development.
Here.
Hilda Rosario Escher.
Here.
Sherry Gleed.
Here.
And Benson Martin, Designee for Acting Superintendent of the Department of Financial Services, Adrian Harris.
Here.
Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. And Acting Chair Knight, you are ready to begin.
Good morning. Before I call this meeting to order, I will note for the record that I will serve as acting chair for today's meeting. I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the New York State Urban Development Corporation doing business as Empire State Development for Thursday, January 20th, 2022. I'd like to ask everyone to please mute your audio until you are ready to speak. Also, I will ask that anyone wishing to speak, please be sure to state your name before you begin so that you can be identified for the folks joining us today by teleconference. I'd like to note for the record that in accordance with current legislation, this meeting will be conducted by video and teleconference. I will also note for the record that the public was given the opportunity to comment on the agenda items by submitting their written comments by noon yesterday. I'd like to state for the record that no comments were received from the public concerning today's agenda items. As always, the directors have received written materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time during the presentations. At this time, I will ask directors whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on the agenda. If so, I will ask you to please make an appropriate disclosure on the record, and we will remind you to recuse yourself from any discussion or vote with regard to such items or items. Hearing none, I will now ask Ed Hamilton to present our first agenda item relating to the appointment of an officer of the corporation. Please begin, Ed.
Good morning, President Knight and the board members. It's Ed Hamilton. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. The directors are asked to approve the appointment of Edward Espeo to the Office of Assistant Treasury Operations, effective January 3rd, as well as confirm him as an officer of the corporation. This position will manage and safeguard ESD's corporate banking accounts, which include daily cash management and investments of approximately $1.2 billion and $4 billion in bond proceeds. Mr. Espeo was recommended to this position as he's done exemplary work at ESD Finance since 2016 and had nearly 10 years of previous Treasury experience with the New York City Department of Treasury prior to joining ESD. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Are there any questions or comments from the directors? As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to this item. I will now entertain a motion for approval.
I move the motion. This is Hilda.
A second, this is Sherry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Steve Golick will now present an item relating to the Build Back Better Regional Challenge. Steve, when you're ready.
Thank you. Today we're asking authority to enter the necessary agreements and take related actions with respect to the Build Better Regional Challenge. This is part of the American Rescue Plan signed into law last year. It's being administered by the United States Economic Development Administration. The Build Back Better Challenge, it's a competitive grant program that aims to boost economic recovery and the related things, and is a competitive grant program. It's a two-phase competition. Phase one, the Western New York Regional Office submitted an application to scale up, was focused on advanced manufacturing, and we were one of 60 awards out of 529 applicants. And the phase one award provides $500,000 to ESD to move forward with the phase two application, which hopefully, if we're successful, we can get up to $100 million to support the projects in our application. So the action item being requested now is to accept and administer those funds and to enter the necessary agreements with our partners. The partners and the projects are laid out in the board materials, but the way this will work is we have until March to submit our phase two application. All our costs and expenses incurred in that will be funded out of this $500,000 grant, which ESD will administer, accept, and then pay out to our partners for costs that are approvable under the Build Back Better guidelines. So hopefully we'll be successful. Like I said, there were 60 phase one applications selected, and there's expected to be 20 or 30 winners of up to $100 million. So hopefully we'll have some good news later in the year. But if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Are there any questions or comments from the directors?
I just want to ask, are the applicants from across the state or just one particular region?
It's just Western New York. I mean, the focus, specifically the guidelines of the EDA program, need to be limited geographic area that has connections, to certain industry sectors. So
Yep.
our was the Western New York region, basically the area covered by the Western New York REDC.
Okay, thank you.
As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to this item. I will now entertain a motion for approval.
I move the motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Jordan Taylor Sloan will present the next item related to Advanced Industry Cluster Study. Jordan, please begin.
Good morning and thank you. Can you hear me okay?
A little faint, if you could be a little louder.
Absolutely, thank you. Good morning and thank you. This is Jordan Taylor Sloan, an entrepreneurship navigator for the Division of Science, Research, and Innovation. Today, we are presenting the Advanced Industry Cluster Study for board consideration. In response to the numerous crises brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic and to invest in projects that promote local economies that will be more resilient to future economic shocks, the U.S. Economic Development Agency is supporting state planning efforts by allocating $59 million for statewide planning grants. The EDA has awarded $1 million to Governor Hochul, and Governor Hochul has deemed ESD as the recipient and manager of the funds to undertake a project consistent with the fund's purpose. The secured $1 million will be used to execute a multi-module study that will provide ESD with current market-grounded information about New York State's strengths and opportunities for expanding its advanced industry clusters and generating long-term follow-on economic growth. ESD will fund 3 modules for a total of $725,000. The remaining $275,000 will fund 1 position at ESD that will manage all aspects of the grant and additional components to support project execution. ESD will procure consultant services to undertake this multi-module study. ESD will distribute funds to 1 to 3 applicants. The following grants to be awarded are as follows: $275,000 for an advanced industry cluster study, $340,000 for a supply chain analysis study, and $110,000 for a top 10 emerging technology fields study. All modules will address composition, contribution to the state's economy, stage of development, and degree to which the state is or can be a global leader. This project is presented to the board for approval to begin the solicitation process. All applications will be screened and scored appropriately by ESD, and the final selected grant awardees will be presented to the board for final approval at a later date. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from the directors? As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to this item. I will now entertain a motion for approval.
I move the motion.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Continuing with our agenda, I'd like to take a few moments to provide the president's report. As this is the first board meeting of 2022, I hope that the new year has been safe and healthy for you and your families. These have been very busy times at ESD. Last week, I testified before the New York State Senate on the effectiveness of incentives in our economic development efforts. This was a critically important conversation, and I affirmed my commitment and this agency's commitment to the principles of transparency, accountability, and results. I also discussed how incentives are part of the economic development strategies across the country. And they are just one tool that we use to support businesses and industries of all sizes. I want to extend my thanks to Kevin Eunice, who joined me for the hearing. This was my first hearing before the legislature in this role, with a budget hearing scheduled for next month. Earlier this month, Governor Hochul delivered her first State of the State address. That was followed by, this week, the executive budget. The governor unveiled a bold economic development agenda with several new initiatives. Central to her vision is reimagining workforce development in New York State. This effort will be driven by ESD with support from the regional councils. We will ensure policies and programs reflect the needs of local communities. The needs of Long Island are different from those in the Capital Region, which are different from those in the Finger Lakes. By acknowledging those differences and understanding what businesses need at the local level, we can prepare New Yorkers for high demand jobs by targeting what is taught in high schools, trade schools, colleges, including SUNY. The governor has been aggressive on climate change, introducing programs and initiatives aimed at reducing the state's carbon footprint. This includes a $500 million investment in offshore wind. Under this proposal, New York State will support offshore wind manufacturing and supply chain infrastructure, which will create thousands of good-paying green jobs, deliver billions in economic impact, and generates enough energy to power millions of homes. This will ensure New York becomes a supply chain hub with the strongest offshore wind energy market along the eastern seaboard. Other state of the state initiatives include the $1 billion rescue plan for small businesses, with a variety of initiatives focusing on growing businesses of the future, helping new businesses struggling to establish themselves, and providing tax relief. The $1 billion Connect All initiative to deliver affordable broadband to millions of New Yorkers and transform the state's digital infrastructure. $250 million for the Restore New York program to tackle blighted properties and revitalize communities across the state, and accelerating tax cuts for middle-class New Yorkers. This is an ambitious plan, and we look forward to discussions with our partners in the legislature over the coming months. I'd like to acknowledge a member of our leadership team. Elaine Kloss, our Chief Financial Officer for more than 5.5 years, is retiring. Elaine has been instrumental in contract administration, procurement, finance operations, overseeing ESD Treasury, and leading our bond transactions. Thank you for your years of service to the agency and to New York State, and we wish you all the best. In closing, as we start a new year, there is uncertainty, but there is opportunity. Despite the remarkable challenges of the past 22 months, we are resilient. We have the chance to build our economy back stronger, more inclusive, and more resilient than ever. And I am very optimistic about the future for the state. Thank you. So now we will move to the project section of today's agenda. Regional directors and project staff are on the line with us to present their items and to answer any related questions. Steve Garlick is up again, and we'll start things off with two projects from our Western New York region. Once Steve provides his presentations, we will take separate votes on each of these items. Steve, when you're ready, please begin with the walkable Olean Phase 2 capital project.
Thank you, Hope. The directors are requested to approve a grant in the amount of $285,964,000 to be used by the city of Jamestown for construction costs associated with public infrastructure improvements, enhancements to roads, bike lanes, and sidewalks on the city's main street. This is part of the Round 6 CFA. Olean was originally awarded $400,000 as part of the CFA application for a $2 million project. However, after they completed design and engineering and made some changes to the actual project, the budget went down from $2 million to 1.4, a little bit less than $1.5 million. And as such, ESD reduced the grant proportionally from $400,000 to $285,964. This grant the project is completed, and it was funded with a mix of also DOT and other public dollars, but has made the city's main street much more walkable and a better environment for pedestrians. The second item we have is a grant to the Buffalo Olmsted Parks Conservancy in the amount of $2,830,000 for costs of design and construction of park improvements to the Martin Luther King Jr. Park in the city of Buffalo. Olmsted is basically the manager and upkeeper of the grounds of the city park system, and MLK Park is really one of the jewels of the Buffalo Olmsted Park system, which was the nation's first system of parks. This is part of a larger grant ESD gave to Olmsted in the amount of $4 million. In 2019, the ESD directors awarded the first phase of the grant, $1.17 million, to the Conservancy, which used funds to complete a detailed study of the park's historic greenhouse complex, as well as did some initial pedestrian lighting enhancements. Now that the study is completed, we're moving forward with the remainder of the grant, $2.83 million, which will include stabilization and restoration of the greenhouses, as well as reconstruction of the pathways surrounding the greenhouse, updated park furnishings, and installation of educational and interpretive signage. So with that, we're requesting two grants be approved by the board today. And if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
I'd like to remind everyone to please state your names before speaking. Are there any questions or comments from the directors on either of these two items? As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to these items. I will now entertain a motion for approval of item 2A, the walkable Olean Phase 2 capital project, as presented by Steve Garlick.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. I will now entertain a motion for the approval item 2B, the Buffalo Olmsted Parks Conservancy Phase 2 capital project, also presented by Steve Garlick.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Vinny Exposito will now present an item from our Finger Lakes region. Vinny, please start when you're ready.
Good morning, Hope. This is Vinny Esposito, Finger Lakes Regional Director. I have one item this month for the directors who are asked to approve a $500,000 capital grant to Cuca Lake Hotel LLC from the Regional Council Capital Fund Round 8. This grant supports the renovation and expansion of an existing hotel facility in Penn that includes a new conference center and meeting space, including a commercial kitchen and banquet and conference room, which was an asset not easily found in this part of the Finger Lakes region. The total project was $4.4 million. It was completed earlier this month. It will create it will retain 22 existing jobs and create 20 new jobs. Be happy to take any questions.
I'd like to remind everyone to please state your names before speaking. Are there any questions or comments from the directors with regard to item 2C as presented by Vinny Esposito? As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to this item. I will now entertain a motion for approval.
I move the motion.
Second,
Benson Martin, second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Mike Reese will now present two projects from our Mohawk Valley region. After Mike provides both presentations, we will take separate votes on each of the items. Mike, when you're ready, please begin with the Booz Allen Hamilton Capital Project.
Good morning, Hope. Good morning, Board of Directors. This is Mike Reese, Regional Director, Mohawk Valley Regional Office. Directors are being asked to approve a grant of up to $300,000 from the Regional Council Capital Fund to Booz Allen Hamilton to be used for a portion of the cost of construction and renovation of 14,000 square feet of leased space and purchase equipment at 99 Otis Street, Rome, New York. Booz Allen Hamilton is a publicly traded consulting firm with 3 locations in Rome. The company serves a diverse base of public and private sector clients across industries with emphasis on cyber analytics and engineering consulting services. By early 2019, the company had filled their 2 other locations in Rome, and they needed to expand their secured space in a timely manner. While primary focus was expanding in Rome, there was a chance that the new jobs being created would have gone to other company offices outside of New York State. The company has 158 existing employees in New York State, and ESD incentive requires them to add an additional 60 jobs. As of this date, the company has added 68 new jobs. Total budget for the project is $3,123,000. It was completed in August 2021. The project is consistent with the Mohawk Valley REDC strategy to develop the cybersecurity industry. My second project, directors are being asked to approve a grant of up to $340,000 from the Regional Council Capital Fund Round 7 to the Griffith Utility Service Corporation to be used for a portion of the cost of replacing electric distribution lines located above ground on poles and relocate them underground, which will improve system reliability as well as increase capacity for future growth. The Griffith Utility Company was established in 2000 as a non-for-profit utility corporation whose primary mission is to support efforts to stimulate economic growth at the Griffith Business and Technology Park. The company distributes electricity and generates and distributes steam energy to the Griffith Park's 70-plus companies and organizations. The organization is responsible for all maintenance and capital improvements to the utility, electric, and steam distribution systems at Griffith Park. Relocating the electric lines provides the redundancy required by the area's vital national security interests, such as the Air Force Research Laboratory and significant regional IT companies. The RED capital grant of $340,000 is 19% of the total project cost of $1,719,000, and the project was completed in June 2020. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
I'd like to remind everyone to please state your names before speaking. Are there any questions or comments from the director on either of these projects? As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to these items. I will now entertain a motion for approval of item 2D, the Booz Allen Hamilton Capital Project, as presented by Mike Reese.
Benson Martin, so moved.
Second, Hilda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. I will now entertain a motion for the approval of item 2E, the Griffith Utility Service Electric Capital Project, also presented by Mike Reese.
Benson Martin, so moved.
Second,
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Mike Yavoli will now present an item from our capital region. Mike, when you're ready, please begin.
Thank you, Hope, and good morning, everyone. This morning, I'm requesting the directors approve a $1,790,000 capital grant to South Island Apartments LLC for a portion of the cost associated with the construction of the public use elements of a mixed-use development at Starbuck Island in the village of Green Island, Albany County. The project is a CREDC Round 7 priority project. The total project cost for the public use portion exceeded $8,950,000, and the total redevelopment cost for the project exceeded $60 million. South Island Apartments LLC is a privately owned real estate development company that was formed with the purpose of undertaking this project. Starbuck Island was home to an iron foundry from 1821 to 1918 and an oil tank terminal until 2008. The 11-acre site was an abandoned brownfield until the grantee purchased the site in 2017 with the vision of creating a waterfront community with easy access to both Green Island's town center and downtown Troy. The company completed a transformative project to develop a vibrant community, including mixed-use buildings with senior apartments, retail and market rate apartments, as well as public use elements, including a marina, seawall, and amphitheater. ESD's grant focused on these public use elements, and this portion of the overall project has been completed. In fact, the overall project was completed in December 2021, so last month. In addition to the ESD funding, the project also utilized brownfield tax credits from DEC with a significant cleanup of this post-industrial site, including portions of the Hudson River. The Starbuck Island project complements the region's economic development strategies by promoting an adaptive reuse of a once blighted and abandoned property and creating a vibrant, engaging community and catalyze new investments and welcome new residents. Happy to take any questions.
I'd like to remind everyone to please state your names before speaking. Are there any questions or comments from the directors with regard to item 2F as presented by Mike Yavoli? As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to this item. I will now entertain a motion for approval.
Benson Martin, so moved.
Hurried,
Second.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Bud Sweet will now present an item from the Southern Tier region. Bud, when you're ready, please begin.
Thank you, Hope, and good morning to all. This is Robert Bud Sweet, Regional Director of the Southern Tier. For your consideration is the Community Conference Center project in downtown Ithaca. This is a $34 million plus project to construct a 54,338 square foot community conference center. It's a project that's been on the drawing boards for a long time, and it is part and parcel with the city of Ithaca's decades-long plan to densify, diversify, and make its downtown more pedestrian friendly. The REDC through CFA Round 9 recommended the project at $5 million. ESD concurred, and we're asking for your consideration of this recommendation. Are there any questions?
I'd like to remind everyone to please state your names before speaking. Are any questions or comments from the directors with regard to item 2G as presented by Bud Sweet? As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to this item. I will now entertain a motion for approval.
Benson Martin, so moved.
Second.
Second.
Hurried.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Brian Scripture will now present an item from our Long Island region. Brian, when you're ready, please begin.
Thank you, Hope. This is Brian Scripture from the team at the Long Island Regional Office under Carol Longworth. The directors are asked to approve a regional council capital grant of up to $300,000 to Community Action Southold Town, also known as CAST, pay for a portion of the construction of acquisition of a building for its headquarters and community resource center located in Southold, which is in Suffolk County. The applicant has purchased the building for a total cost of $2.8 million. CAST is a not-for-profit founded in 1965 as a social service agency. Its mission is to serve low-income residents on Long Island's North Fork by providing a safety net and promoting self-sufficiency. Demand for these services has grown as the tourist industry attracts low-wage agricultural and hospitality workers, including many immigrants. Their current headquarters in a rented space limits the food pantry supply and availability of early childhood and adult education programs and their other services. This project was a round 9 priority to Long Island Regional Economic Development Council, as it supports workforce development and childcare for low-income families. CAST used this capital grant to purchase a former church in South Holt. The acquisition has expanded its footprint, and CAST anticipates it will now be able to serve up to 20% more families. The new facility will offer expanded educational and workforce training programs, including new culinary skills courses, as well as employment assistance, and they will offer childcare for those attending the training. Purchase is complete, and they had a ribbon cutting this last October, and are now operating out of this new facility, and the grant is therefore ready for disbursement. Thank you.
I'd like to remind everyone, please state your names before speaking. Are there any questions or comments from the director with regard to item 2H as presented by Brian Scripture? As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to this item. I will now entertain a motion for approval.
Motion, Hilda.
Second,
And Sherry.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. We will next have an act the direction of grant item, which will be presented by Steve Hunt. Steve, please begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Hope and directors. I'm presenting one project from the North Country this morning. At the direction of grants referred to those commitments listed in the New York State budget that have originated from the Assembly and Senate, or Assembly, the Senate, or the Executive Chamber. For these commitments, ESD is named as the agency to administer the funding, but does not select the recipients of the funding. We're seeking board authorization to amend a previously approved grant to the Adirondack Thousand Islands Sports and Events Commission, doing business as the Adirondack North Country Sports Council. In January 2020, the board approved a $5 million working capital grant from the Upstate Revitalization Initiative for operational functions related to the 2023 World University Games. At this time, the directors are being asked to approve an additional $5 million appropriation at the direction of the Executive Chamber in fiscal year 21-22 to be funded from the New York Works Empire State Development Fund to allow the Adirondack North Country Sports Council to continue the operational functions related to Phase 2 of the 2023 Winter University Games 5-year implementation plan. The project will incorporate several operational functions, including the continued development of a comprehensive branding, marketing, security, and logistics plans for the games. In addition, the grant will support plans to address regional needs, such as, but not limited to, affordable and workforce housing, transportation, year-round employment growth, private investment, and hospitality infrastructure. The World University Games are staged, an event staged throughout the world, and are a celebration of international university sports and culture, draws many thousands of student athletes, making it among the world's largest and most prestigious multi-sports events. This project is consistent with the North Country Regional Economic Development Council's plan to solicit recreational and competitive sporting events and competitions on the national and international level, and to leverage regional identity, sports tourism, and economic activities. We're asking for board approval of this amendment to the project, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Are there any questions or comments from the directors with regard to item 3A as presented by Steve Hunt? As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to this item. I will now entertain a motion for approval.
Benson Martin, so moved.
Second,
Greg Lead. Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Paul Tronalone will now present an item related to the Canal Side Land Use Improvement Project.
Thank you, President Knight. Good morning, directors. This is Paul Tronnell, and I'm the VP of Planning for Western New York, and I'm presenting today on behalf of Steve Rinaldi, the president of our subsidiary in Buffalo, the Erie Canal Harbor Development Corporation. For your consideration this morning, the adoption of a modified general project plan for ECHDC's Canal Side Land Use Improvement Project on the downtown Buffalo waterfront. Now, just as background, the original GPP for this project was recommended by the ECHDC board and adopted by the directors back in 2009, and at the time included a big box retailer, a Bass Pro Outdoor World store on the northern portion of what we call the Odd Block, which was the site of the former Memorial Auditorium, and now contains a series of interpreted canals that celebrate the site's location on the western terminus of the Erie Canal. When that retailer withdrew from the project in 2010, ESD adopted a modified plan to advance the project in phases. A number of prior modifications have already been made to the plan to allow such components as the now completed Harbor Center mixed-use project, the Explore and More Children's Museum, and the upcoming Heritage Point mixed-use development. But this current modification includes a comprehensive rewrite to update the document, but primarily focuses on that North Odd Block, the former location of that big box retailer, and it's based on a preferred concept plan that was developed in 2020 after an extensive public planning process. The modified GPP also reflects details of what's actually been developed since 2009, and it also includes refinements to the canal side design guidelines to foster the ultimate development of the North Odd Block. The modified GPP was attached as your materials, but just so some key points: that North Odd Block parcel under the modification will allow a mix of retail, office, residential, and hotel uses and structured parking with a development pattern that evokes the 19th century street grid that was once on the site, and will allow up to 425,000 gross square feet in several buildings under subsequent developer solicitations by ECHDC. The investment levels has actually gone up from originally a $250 million project to an over $700 million project, and with a substantial increase in the private investment match against the public investment. It is now involving $137 million in public investment and an over $570 million anticipated private development investment, or a 1 to 4.2 return on that investment. All that with a reduction in its annual operating budget from $2.4 million to $1.3 million. So all that's good news. The project was the subject of a generic environmental impact statement, and the directors issued findings back in March of 2010. We prepared a technical memorandum to evaluate the changes under this modification against the findings of that original generic environmental impact statement, and found that the original documentation was still suitable and still in line with the anticipated impact, so no further environmental review is required, and the overall project schedule remains the same, with the expected completion to occur by 2031. So to conclude, the directors are asked to adopt the modified GPP, authorize a public hearing, and authorize all related actions. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions or comments from the directors on this item? As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to this item. I will now entertain a motion for approval of item 4A as presented by Paul Tronnell.
Motion carry. Hilda.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Next, we will have two New York Ventures investment items, which will be presented by Momo B and Jonathan Green. After both investments are presented, we will take a vote on each item. Momo, please begin with the investment in the Crew Health.
Good morning, everyone. This is Momo B from New York Ventures. The directors are being asked to approve up to $350,000 in up to $1.2 million seed financing into the Crew. The Crew is an existing portfolio company of New York Ventures. We have invested $200,000 in the Crew previously in July 2020. The Crew is a minority woman-founded software platform company based in New York City that matches mid-career women for peer coaching and networking based on their personalities, values, demographics, and life goals to accelerate their personal and professional growth. There are millions of women in the middle with unfulfilled ambitions who know what they want but don't have the time to find, cultivate, and sustain a network that will help them to achieve their goals. The crew takes the work out of the networking and help women find and coach each other to achieve their goals with a proprietary matching algorithm, digital goals tracking tool, exclusive content, and a virtual guide through an annual membership. The crew has demonstrated initial product market fit since the company's launch in May 2018. It is currently generating revenue with a robust revenue pipeline set up for venture growth. It has also provided a solution to social isolation for working women during the COVID-19 pandemic. In order to fund the company's activities over the next 12 months, the crew is raising an up to $1.2 million financing. New York Ventures will invest up to $350,000 into the financing round, with the balance being provided by private sector investors. As part of the due diligence process, New York Ventures staff and external investment advisory committee evaluated the company's business plan and growth prospects, as well as the terms of the investment. As a result of the analysis, New York Ventures and the investment committee both agree that the market opportunity and the growth potential offered by the crew warrants an investment by the fund and recommend its approval. Happy to answer any questions.
And Jonathan, go ahead when you're ready.
Good morning, Hope and directors. My name is Jonathan Green. I am a senior director with New York Ventures as well. This morning, we're asking the directors to approve up to $1.5 million in a follow-on preferred equity investment in Owl.ai, subject to legal due diligence. Owl.ai previously received $125,000 investment from our fund in 2021 in a Series seed round. This is a follow-on round, as I mentioned before. Additionally, the company has received funding from the Luminate Accelerator, which is an optics, photonics, and imaging accelerator funded by Empire State Development based in Rochester. Owl.ai is a Rochester, New York-based company commercializing 3D thermal imaging and ranging cameras for the automotive and industrial vehicle safety markets. The company's patented passive sensor detection and classification system, which includes a proprietary censorship and AI software, complements optical and radar sensors on vehicles by being able to operate day, night, and in all types of weather conditions. Initially, the company will sell its entire platform to industrial and defense customers, eventually transitioning to automotive markets. Sales will include hardware and software components with a licensing of its reference design for automotive markets. Part of the due diligence process, our fund and our external investment advisory committee evaluated the company's business plan and growth prospects, as well as the terms of the investment. As a result of this analysis, our staff and the external investment advisory committee both agree that the market opportunity and growth potential offered by this New York State company warrants an investment by New York Ventures, and we recommend its approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments from the directors on either of these two investments? As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to either of these items. I will now entertain a motion for the approval of item 5A, the investment in the Crew Health, Inc., as presented by Momo B.
Benson Martin, so moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. I will now entertain a motion for approval of item 5B, the investment in Owl.ai, Inc., as presented by Jonathan Green.
Benson Martin, so moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Now I'd like to turn things over to Goldie Wax, who will provide a summary of the administrative items on today's agenda before I call for a vote on these items. Goldie, please go ahead.
Hey, thank you, Hope, and good morning, directors. As a reminder, in order to help streamline our board meetings, we previously implemented an oral summary presentation process in connection with the administrative actions section of our agenda. You receive a full set of written descriptive materials for each of these items in your board materials, as you have for this meeting, but rather than having individual oral presentations made on each, I will provide a brief summary of the items. At the conclusion of the summary, we will then entertain any comments or questions the directors may have. As noted earlier, we did not receive any comments from the public on any of these items. Following my presentation and any questions, the acting chair will then call for a motion to approve the entire slate of administrative actions, which include items 6A through 6E. The administrative action items submitted for your consideration today and for which you have received written materials are as follows. The first, item 6A, the board is being asked to approve a payment pursuant to the Electric Generation Facility Cessation Mitigation Program to the town of Tonawanda in the amount of $871,666. This payment will offset a reduction in this year's tax revenue to the town due to the closure of the Huntley Power Generating Facility in March 2016. Approval of this payment will bring total disbursements from the fund to approximately $42 million of the $140 million budgeted for the program. Item 6B is a request to authorize a contract amendment with the environmental consultant STV Inc. in connection with the Brooklyn Developmental Center mixed-use project. The contract amount would be increased by $250,000, bringing the total contract amount to $1.75 million. The contract term would be extended by 10 years in order for STV to continue to provide environmental consulting services, including assisting ESD monitoring ESD compliance with environmental measures during the approximately 10-year build-out period. The contract will continue to be funded entirely from an INPREST account funded by the developer. Item 6C. The directors are requested to authorize the corporation to amend its contract with FX Collaborative Architects, LLP, to continue to provide architectural planning and design guidelines services in connection with the Penn Station Area Civic and Land Use Improvement Project in an amount not to exceed $208,720, with a new total contract amount of $1,486,220. Item 6D relates to a prior contract. At the November 2017 board meeting, the directors approved a contract to replace the corporation's phone system using a company known as 8x8 Inc. hosted telecom services. In addition to the implementation and hardware costs, the contract covered licensing and maintenance costs for 3 years. Subsequent amendments have been approved by the directors to extend the contract term and increase the total contract amount to cover the needs of the corporation. ESD is now seeking authorization to enter into a new agreement with Vertical Communications, a certified reseller of 8x8, to continue to provide 8x8 hosted telecom licenses and maintenance services to multiple ESD offices throughout New York State. The contract term is for 5 years and an amount not to exceed $956,611, as outlined in your materials. Last, we have item 6E. This is an administrative item pertaining to the Moynihan Station Civic and Land Use and Improvement Project and is a request to amend the contract with ANC Sports Enterprises, LLC. The proposed amendment is in the amount of $313,650 with a term extension through December 2022. ANC is responsible for the maintenance, operation, and content management services for digital displays and lighting for the James A. Farley Building and the adjacent West End concourse. ANC has developed an unparalleled working knowledge of the entire network and the unique operating conditions of the facility that would be nearly impossible for another vendor to replicate seamlessly and provide the same level of service. I'll now turn it back to our acting chair, who will call for any questions or comments you may have on any of these items before calling for a vote. We also have item-related staff on the line today to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Goldie. As noted earlier, we do not have any comments from the public with regard to these items. Are there any questions or comments from the directors on any of these items? If not, may I have a motion for the approval of items 6A through 6E as submitted on the written materials provided to the directors and summarized orally today?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. There being no further business, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So
Very
moved.
good.
Thank you, everyone, for participation in today's meeting.